Hi folks, Rodney back again. Hey, today I'm going to do a video on a couple different dirt bikes that I have. Every time I get a new bike, people ask me, well, why did you get away from that bike and why did you go to the other bike? And so I'm going to kind of talk about the difference between a two-stroke that I just bought and a four-stroke that I still have. And then also mention the four-stroke that I just sold. So let me flip the bike. Let me flip the camera around here, and so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So this is my new 2022 KTM 250XC TPI. I had a 2019 250XC. It was the carbureted version, and I wanted to try out the TPI just because I hadn't had one. But then also I ride mostly off-road. And some of the OHV areas that we ride in, you know, there's some pretty steep hills. There's obviously a lot of rocks, a lot of roots, and in some areas, the two-stroke is a much better bike for that type of riding. Now, I will talk about some benefits from the 450 that I have, and talk about the 350 that I just got rid of. So I just did a recent review on my 250XC, and I want to hit a couple things that I didn't get to on the last one. One of them being the spring fork conversion I have here. So these are what they call Dalsagio spheres. They're a hydraulic cartridge. What you do is you just take out the internals of the AER 48 forks that come on the bike and drop in the cartridge and get it set up. Spring fork conversion, the reason a lot of people will go to that is it gives you much better front end traction. Not so much that it makes a huge difference in the ride and the comfort, which it does, depending on how you have it set up. I hear that the new AER 48 forks are a lot better than what they used to be, but the one thing that I didn't like about it, I didn't like the fact that obviously front end traction was one, but number two, it seemed like you were always chasing the right air pressure. And I'm like everybody else, I want to get to the track. You know, when you have to bleed your forks, you know, you got a little bleed valve up here. When you have to bleed them, you go in and bleed them, but then you jump on the bike and take off and ride. The air forks, you have to set it to the right pressure. And the problem with that is that it would actually change pressure as you were riding. So, you know, you may start out at 139 pounds, and by the time you end up finishing riding, you may be up to 145, and which has totally changed your spring rate. Excuse me. I did just have it revalved. I mentioned that in the last video, but for anybody who didn't see that, I did have it revalved by Darren Mees over at M9 Suspension. He's in Redmond, Oregon, if you guys want to look him up. But he does phenomenal work. I've also had the suspension done. This is KYB suspension that comes from the factory, but Darren's done this one as well. I would say that probably Darren specializes on the KYB stuff. He's got a Yamaha himself, a couple of guys that he rides with all the time have Yamahas, and that suspension is phenomenal. He told me up front, he said, man, you're gonna love it, and I truly do. So he does amazing work. But anyway, back to the reason I went back to the two-stroke. With the two-stroke, you know, it has this lug ability, and when I say lug ability, you can run down low in the RPMs, and it will just kind of just keep chugging. As long as you have the throttle turned just a hair where the throttle body is open, it will continue to just kind of keep chugging along. And it makes it easy to get over rocks and roots, especially if you're in some tight technical stuff. So that was kind of the biggest reason for wanting to go back to the two-stroke. I do love the two-stroke. It's quick, it's fun, it's playful. Excuse me. The one big thing, you know, with the carbureted version is you always had to mix the gas. Not that that was that big a deal, but the one issue that you would have, and I wouldn't say it was really an issue, but you always have spooge coming out of the back. And so, you know, they talk about the new TPI version is more efficient. You don't have as much wasted oil, which is true. You can see here that there's absolutely nothing there. And that's after I put 2 hours on the bike and run it pretty hard. You know, other than that, you know, things I love about the bike, Brembo brakes are hard to beat. You got the Brembo clutch. Steel frame is totally different than the aluminum frame that you would have on, like, for instance, the YZ450FX that I have here. It's going to be a little more compliant. It turns better. Those are probably some of the bigger things. Let me switch over and talk about the YZ for a moment. So one of the things I really like about the YZ450FX is that it has the 5-speed wide ratial transmission. So your first and second gear are a little lower. Your fourth and fifth are a little bit higher. And so the one complaint, if I had one, there is a big gap between second and third. So sometimes when you're shifting from second to third, it seems like it just really lugs a little bit unless you're kind of high in the RPMs to begin with. But a little stab of the clutch and it will get up in the RPMs really quick and eliminates that issue. So the question came up, why did I go back to a 2-stroke and why did I get rid of my 4-stroke? Well, obviously I still have a 4-stroke, so it wasn't that I was getting rid of it. When it came down to riding it, funny thing is the 350 that I had that I just sold, when you do lap time comparisons, I was actually faster on the 350 than what I was on either of these two bikes. So, it wasn't about, being fast or wanting to get faster. It was about just pure enjoyment. The one downfall to the 350 is that it has the ability to stall considerably easier than either the 450 or the 2-stroke does. And so, like I mentioned, in the areas that we ride in, when you get into some tight technical stuff, obviously it's a lot more trail friendly to either go with the 2-stroke or that really low first gear that you have in the 4-stroke on the YZ. It's, definitely makes it a lot easier for that type of terrain. Biggest reason, obviously that's the biggest reason for wanting to go back to the 2-stroke. I like to get a new bike every year to 2 years, and so it was just time for a change anyway. But I had a 2019 that I mentioned. I really enjoyed riding that bike, and I wanted to kind of go back to that to see if the TPI was any better. Now, let's talk about TPI for a moment. As I mentioned in the previous video, the TPI version is a little softer off the bottom. And so when you go to take off, it seems like it takes a little bit longer for it to kind of start hitting your RPMs and start spooling up. And I know part of that could be a power valve adjustment. I've already adjusted it some. I do need to back it out probably another quarter to a half a turn on the power valve. And that would probably make a big difference. But everybody that I've watched videos of, they've made the same comment that it is a little bit softer on the bottom. What everybody else has also mentioned is that it runs clean through the rev range all the way through. And that's absolutely true. With the 2019 that I had, there was a little, I would say it kind of sputters on the bottom a little bit. Once you hit the power band, then the thing just screams. And that's what I wanted to see, but I wanted that all the way through the rev range. So obviously it's very clean all the way through. It's more fuel efficient. These have a 2.2 gallon tank instead of the 2.7 gallon tank that the 2019 had. And I think part of that they did that is just to save a little bit of weight, because you do pick up some weight here. I think you were at 235 on the 2019 model. It went up to 244 on this. Now, part of that could be a couple different things. Obviously, you've got your injector reservoir up here. Then, like I said, you've got your twin port injectors are going to add a little more weight. So a couple different things that just added weight a little bit to it. But the one thing I can say is that you don't notice any difference out on the trail. So one doesn't feel any heavier than the other. I would say that with the TPI version, it probably spools up a little bit quicker than what the carbureted version did. But I don't think this one runs quite as strong on the very top as what the carbureted version did either. So that's just some of my thoughts there. But there again, one of the benefits of having the 4-stroke is that with the 4-stroke, it has more rotating mass and more inertia. And so the benefit is that suspension feels a lot softer and a lot more plush on the 4-stroke than what it does on the 2-stroke. So this suspension here I had on my 2019 carbureted version. When I put the Del Saggio spheres on, that was quite an investment. So I didn't want to give that up. So I just brought that over to the new bike. So I flipped that over to the 350. Suspension was great on the 350. Now I just brought it over to this 2-stroke. it's night and day difference how it rides on the four stroke versus the 2-stroke. And the only thing that I can figure, because the weight's almost identical on the two bikes, the only thing that I think anybody can kind of accommodate that to, or equate that to rather, would be that less inertia and less rotating mass. So this doesn't feel quite as stable as what a 4-stroke does, and I'm only going from my 350 that I had. But every 2-stroke that I've ridden in the past has been the same way. It just doesn't feel quite as planted to the ground. And I think that's just, as I mentioned, is less rotating mass to kind of keep it planted. But anyway, I love both bikes. I love them for different reasons. It's always fun to kind of be able to change up a little bit and ride, a 4-stroke one day, and then the next time you go out, be able to ride the 2-stroke. I will probably end up putting more hours on this bike now. Obviously this one's only got 2 hours on it. I've got 40 hours on my YZ450 FX. I have the FX kind of set the way I want it. So for instance, I've had the suspension revalve. I've got a full Yoshimura exhaust on it. I have the FCP motor mounts. You've got titanium here in the front. You've got billet aluminum there on the back. And the biggest thing, and it's funny, I hear some people say, oh, well, that will never make a difference. You're just wasting your money. Trust me, if you've ever ridden one that has the motor mounts, you put different motor mounts on it, you'll tell a drastic difference. The way it leans into the corners, the way it stands back up coming out of a corner, the front end traction that you pick up with the titanium mounts in the front, there's definitely a difference. So anyway, I've got this bike set up the way I want it. I can't really think of anything that I'd want to put on the bike that it doesn't already have. And the fact that you have the Yamaha Power Tuner app on this one gives you the ability to go ahead and map it and tune it, exactly the way you want it. So I can't see, going out there and spending more money now on a brand new one when it's not going to be probably any better than what I actually already have. So I'm going to stick with that one for a while. And then, like I said, this will probably be the one that gets most of the hours on it. So hope you guys enjoy the video. If you have any questions, anything I can help with, a couple parts that I've tried out in the past, if you want to know any information about that, and find out if it would be a good investment for you, or if it's just a waste of money, just let me know. Let me know your questions. Just put them in the comments. If you haven't already subscribed, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm going to keep putting out some videos, but just let me know what you guys are looking for. Thanks for watching.